This is Nikon's latest camera in their Z mirrorless lineup, the crop sensor retro-inspired Nikon Zfc. In this video, I'm going to tell you all about this camera, the things I love about it, the things I dislike about it, and I will, of course, be sharing some images and video that I've been capturing using this camera. I'm also going to tell you the reason why I bought this camera, because it's not for the reason you might think. And I'm going to bring you all this from beautiful Dartmoor. Here's what you can expect in this video. I'm going to split it up into a number of different parts. Now, if you look in the video description below, you'll find time codes for all the chapters. So if there's a section or a topic you're not particularly interested in, feel free to jump about as you want. First part, we'll be looking at the technical specifications. Now, these will be the technical specifications relevant to me and my purchasing decision, but if you want to geek out on all the technical specifications, just head on over to the Nikon website. Then I'll be telling you about why I bought this camera, again, perhaps not for the reasons you might be thinking. Then I'm going to talk about landscape photography with the Nikon Zfc, and I'll be sharing lots of the photographs that I've been capturing with this camera. And then finally, we will also be talking about video. Now, for me, this is perhaps the most interesting technology in this particular camera, so do stay tuned for that section as well. But if that's all good with you, let's make a start. Let's talk about the technical specifications of the Nikon Zfc. Now, I'm going to cover the technical specifications that were of interest to myself as a landscape photographer and YouTube content creator. Obviously, your requirements might vary considerably, so if you want to check out the full list of specifications, then head on over to the Nikon's website. But here are some of the specifications that caught my eye. It's a 21 megapixel DX crop sensor. It uses the Nikon's Z mount for its lenses. It shoots 14-bit RAW files. It unfortunately only has one UHS-1 SD card slot. It's got an EVF with 100% coverage. It has a round viewfinder, the all-important vari-angle touchscreen. You can dial in long exposures longer than 30 seconds. You can put up a grid display that shows the rule of thirds. The camera does have some weather sealing, but it is not fully weather sealed. It's got full-time autofocus in video with IAF. It can shoot between ISO 100 and 51200. It can shoot video at 4K 25 frames a second and 1080 at 120 frames a second. It's got a mic input. It can do built-in time-lapse. You can use it as a webcam thanks to compatibility with the Nikon webcam utility, and it has a USB Type-C connector. So for a camera of this size and price point, I'd say it's got quite a lot of features in it. Here is the Nikon Zfc, but why did I buy this camera? Well, first of all, it was not because of the retro styling. Yeah, I like all these buttons and dials and knobs and stuff, they look great, but that's not why I bought this camera. And also, if you've been paying attention to the technical specifications, you've probably already realized that many of those specifications I could have had by simply upgrading from my Nikon Z7 to a Z7 II, and I would have had most of the features, perhaps with the exception of the variable angle touchscreen. So why did I buy it? Well, actually, I never bought this camera to take stills with. Well, certainly not originally. I bought it for its video capabilities. The video capabilities in this camera, which I will talk about in a bit more detail later on in this video, are very similar to the Z6 Mark II. And I recently hired a Z6 Mark II to make my documentary film about Nikon Z, and it was a fantastic camera to use. The autofocus and the ability to use those Z mount lenses and get shallow depth of field was really nice. I really enjoyed using that camera. And I could of course bought a Z6 II to do my video work, but A, that's quite an expensive camera, and also it doesn't have the vari-angle touchscreen, which for me is really important because I want to be able to see what I'm shooting. As a one-man band, it's rare that I'm actually just behind the camera like I was with the Nikon Zfc documentary. I'm normally in front of it, so being able to see what I'm shooting is a real bonus. Now, I'm shooting this particular video on the Nikon Z7, but you know, it's obviously it takes a bit more time to set up and compose the shot. It'd be a lot easier for this vari-angle touchscreen. So I bought it for the video capabilities. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is also, this will be my family camera because of the small compact size. I've also bought used, that is, this Nikon DX Z mount lens here, 16-50 VR, and I'll be using it with this camera. So just to clarify, actually, while I'm on the topic, I did buy this camera. This is my camera. I paid my own money for it, so no one's given me this camera, so I've invested my hard-earned cash into this. So again, using it for video, using it as my family camera, it should be really good because it's got the eye autofocus and the animal autofocus, so great for taking family pictures and pictures of Monty, my dog, and the video, and it will be really good as well. So it's going to be a great family camera as well. But when I went through and I bought the camera and I was looking at the technical specifications, I thought this is going to be a really capable landscape photography camera as well. So I'd be a fool not to try and use it for some landscape photographs. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next part, stills photography. Hopefully you've already been enjoying some of the landscape photographs that I've been capturing with the Nikon Zfc. Now, what normally happens is when I get a new stills camera, I normally sell the previous one to fund the new one. But as the Nikon Zfc isn't actually replacing my Nikon Z7, I still have both these cameras available to me. But what I've decided not to do is to do a side-by-side comparison, because let's face it, the cameras aren't really in the same market or the same price point. Nikon Z7 is a £3,000 full frame camera, and the Nikon Zfc is a £800 crop sensor camera. But they're not in the same market, so people probably aren't going to be deciding, do I buy the Zfc or do I buy a Nikon Z7 or Nikon Z7 II? So it seems fairly redundant to do a side-by-side comparison of the images. The other thing is I'm only going to be showing you landscape photographs. I'm a landscape photographer, that's what I do. I don't shoot weddings or shoot portraits or product shots or anything else like that. So I'm going to mostly show you landscape photographs. But what has the Zfc been like to use as a landscape photography camera? Well, I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed using it. As the Nikon Zfc is part of the Nikon Z mirrorless family of cameras, it's got a lot of the great features that got me to move to the Z mirrorless system in the first place, and some of the reasons why I continue to enjoy using my Z7 so much. First of all, EVF. I mean, for me, the EVF was the absolute killer feature to get me to move from my digital SLR to the Nikon Z mirrorless system. It's an absolutely outstanding feature if you're a landscape photographer. That camera is also shooting 14-bit RAW files. Okay, it only shoots at ISO 100, so it's a stark difference between my Z7 there, which shoots ISO 64, but in a lot of circumstances, I'm going to be able to still get great images even at ISO 100. And of course, the Nikon Z mount. I've, over the years, built up a collection of lenses, and I'm going to be able to use all of these lenses on this Nikon Zfc. So that's my 14-30, my 24-70, my 24-200, my 100mm macro, my 50mm f2, my 10mm pancake lens, and of course that lens I just bought, that DX 16-50 lens. So I've got this massive collection of lenses, and unlike when I bought the Z7, that lens lineup is much more flushed out now. So, you know, I've got almost all the lenses that I could possibly want, and I can use them by swapping them out between the Z7 and the Nikon Zfc. So great versatility there. Also, it's got the fantastic autofocus system. I've got focus peaking. I've got inbuilt focus stacking. I also got GPS tagging as well, which I absolutely love. So all those things that got me to move to the Nikon Z7 system in the first place are largely present here in this Zfc camera. But if you want to know more about my reasons why I moved to mirrorless, check out my Z7 video, which I'll include a link for in the corner of the screen. There are, of course, lots of new things to like about the Nikon Zfc. First of all, there's that retro styling that gives you all those dials and knobs at the top of the camera. And I have to say, even though I didn't buy the camera, because of the styling and the control layout, I've really enjoyed using it. I've also been using it with the traditional command dial setup, so it's front and back command dials. Now, only time will tell whether I actually stick with the retro styling controls or just fall back to my muscle memory and use the command dials. The other thing I really like is that vari-angle touchscreen, first one I've had in a Nikon Z camera. Now, while that is an important video feature for me, I take a lot of vertical orientation landscape photographs, so having a flip-out screen that comes down like that is really useful to me. Other useful features going to be that rule of thirds grid overlay. Now, for some reason, Nikon cameras have always had a 4x4 grid, and almost every other camera manufacturer's had a rule of thirds option. Now I can put both on. I can either have the 4x4 grid, or I can have a 3x3 grid, which is just useful sometimes, just helping you set up your initial composition. Extended shutter times as well. So in almost all other Nikon cameras, you couldn't dial in a shutter time of longer than 30 seconds. You have to use a cable release after that. Now, other camera manufacturers have always had this, particularly I believe the Fujis have. But finally now in the Nikon Z6 II and Z7 II and this camera, you can now go well past that 30 seconds. So it'll be great for me when I go down to the coast and I'm trying to do some long exposures. And finally, size and weight. Now, while size and weight aren't always that important to me when it comes to camera choice, as this camera is likely to be used as a second body, a family camera, a day out camera, a holiday camera, that kind of thing, actually having a small compact option that I can put smaller lenses on is going to be super useful. Now, a couple of things that I don't like, or particularly the one I'm less keen on, is the battery. Now, I can understand it's a different battery from all the other batteries that I've used, so I've got a nice collection of batteries from my Z7 and chargers and all that kind of stuff. It's a different battery in this camera. I can understand why, but it does mean I'm going to have to buy some additional batteries and a charging system. Single card slot, yeah, it is what it is in a camera of this size and this price point. I can accept that. But other than those kind of small niggles, I think, certainly compared to the Z7 when it came out, they've ironed out a lot of those niggles in terms of lens lineup and features and menu options. The Nikon Zfc is a very capable landscape photography camera. Like I said, I never bought it to take landscape photographs with it, but I've been really impressed with its capabilities and the images that it's been producing. So I think if you're actually looking for a camera to get into the Nikon Z system, this could be your first mirrorless camera, for example, this represents a great option. Even if you're not that particularly interested in the retro-inspired controls, it's got all the internals, give you all the capabilities that you would want from a mirrorless camera at this price point. And I really love the Nikon Z mirrorless system as well, so I think this is a great entry point. And also, if you've got Nikon Z6 or Z6 II, Z7, Z7 II, the Zfc can make for a great second body, one that you can sort of take as a travel camera or just chuck in, like I say, as a second body. I've been really impressed with the images that have come out here, and it's a more than capable landscape photography camera. I do hope you're enjoying this video, and if you are, remember to click on that like button and give the video a share. And also, if you've got some time, please do leave me a comment. I do try and read and reply to everyone's comments. And if you like this video and perhaps you want to see more video content from me about landscape photography, please also consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you do, remember to click on the little bell icon, that way you'll receive a notification as soon as I post up a new video. For this section of the video, I'm actually going to film it using the Nikon Zfc. I've got my 24-70 lens on there, and as I look on the articulated screen, it's got my eye locked on and it's doing a great job of keeping focus. But why have I moved from my old video camera to the Nikon system? Well, it's a long story. I've shot a video about it already. You'll find it on my channel page somewhere. Look that up if you're at all interested. Now, while I have always loved the video quality I got from my Nikon cameras, it's always been superior to everything else that I've always had, particularly with those Nikkor lenses. You get some really nice depth of field effects. I've never found it to be a particularly easy camera to use as a solo filmmaker. For example, the autofocus has never been, you know, what we call truly reliable. It hasn't had things like face detection until recently. It hasn't had things like eye autofocus until very recently. And it's not something I've been able to rely on particularly well. And as I've mentioned earlier, it's never had that articulating screen. So this has been camera's been a lot easier for me to set up. I can just look there on the LCD screen and I can see that I'm perfectly framed. So those features have always been missing. Now that's all been fixed. Now with the Zfc, I've got the articulating screen. I've got that great autofocus system from the Z6 II as well. So for me now is the right time to jump in there. Now again, I could have bought a Z6 II and had a few extra features as well, plus another full frame camera, but you know, there is the cost to think about, and it doesn't come with that all important articulating screen. So what makes the Nikon Zfc such a good camera for video? Well, first of all, it's shooting 4K at 25 frames a second with no additional crop. Now, I've been doing YouTube for about 5 years now, and I've shot all my videos in 4K, so it was absolutely mandatory that this camera had good 4K video. It also shoots 1080p at 120 frames a second, but I don't think I'm likely to use that particular feature. It's also Z mount, so I've got access to all my Z mount lenses, plus you know, I've got creative options for buying things like 1.8 lenses later on down the line, so my video quality through those great Nikkor lenses is going to look absolutely fantastic. And even when I do use shallow depth of field, I know that that full-time eye autofocus is going to nail it and it's going to allow me to get that shallow depth of field without having to worry about the camera and whether it's actually tracking on the right bit of my face. It's also got a mic input, so I'm using the Rode Wireless 2Go system at the moment. So I've got the receiver on top of there, plugged into the mic socket, and then I've got one of the transmitters here. And this allows me to roam about all over the scene without being tied to the camera. It's got things like built-in time-lapse. You can power it from USB-C. You can use it as a webcam, thanks to Nikon's webcam utility. Basically, it ticks most of the boxes that I'm looking for in a good video camera. No camera is perfect, and the Nikon Zfc is no exception, particularly at this price point. So there are a couple of niggles and features I wish this camera had. First of all, I wish it had in-body stabilization. Well, I say that, I actually shoot most of my video work from a tripod, so having that built-in stabilization to the body would have been more of a nice to have. On the odd occasion that I do a bit of running and gunning and hand hold the camera, that's why I bought that used Nikkor 16-50 it was DX lens, because it's got inbuilt VR, so that'll be a nice wide angle lens, and because of the VR I'll be able to use that handheld. So I'm pretty well happy that I got that covered. The other thing is, I wish it had a red recording tally light. My previous video camera had that. Now, while I can look at the articulated screen and I can see it says recording, you know, when I'm a little bit further away, having a red tally light to let me know that the system is recording is pretty useful. Another small niggle, just where the microphone socket is at the side of the camera, that's also where the flippy out screen comes out. So you just got to flip out the screen, and it's part of it's slightly covered by where my mic's plugged in, but really not a great showstopper, certainly not by a long way. I can still see what I'm doing, but I guess it would have been nice if it would be on the other side. Again, just a niggle. A feature I would have liked to potentially have would be 4K at 50 frames a second, but you know, I question how much I actually would have used that. And what else? Batteries as well. I've mentioned that before as well. Again, because video can be quite heavy on the batteries, it would have been nice to be able to use my existing set of batteries with this camera. But like I say, you can't have everything. They're just small little niggles, and I'm pretty happy with everything else. But what I am particularly happy about is actually finally having one camera system to do both video and stills. I've got this access to this fantastic range of lenses that I can use both on my Z7 and on this Nikon Zfc. It's great to have that one system. I'm really happy with it. It's always a bit of a risk pre-ordering the camera based on the specifications that you read. But that's exactly what I did with the Nikon Zfc. But now that I've got the camera and I've been using it for a couple of weeks to shoot both landscape photographs and video, I have to say that I'm really happy with my decision. It's really delivered for me in terms of both a stills camera and the video camera. Now, the retro styling, I guess, you know, it's a little bit polarizing. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. I'm still a little bit indifferent about it. I mean, I didn't buy it because of its retro styling, but I know I do quite enjoy it. But like I said earlier, whether I continue to use those buttons and knobs in the top or just stick to the command dials, I guess time will tell. But the styling aside, for what for me is important is the insides of that camera, what it can do in terms of stills photography and video. And for me, it delivers in buckets. So I'm really happy with my purchasing decision. And it's also a great addition to my Nikon Z setup. Now, if you want to know what else is in that setup in terms of cameras and lenses, I've got a playlist popping up in the corner of the screen. Please do take the time to check that out. But I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, remember to give it a like and all that good stuff. But other than that, I'll see you in the next one.